Welcome everyone in this new episode of Let's Talk AI. I'm super happy to be with Christophe Blefari today. Christophe, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. So happy to be here and to chat with you.
Likewise. So, quick remember to anyone who is tuning in and is new to the podcast, we're diving deeper into many subjects related to AI and data. So, today we're with Christophe. Christophe, maybe can you introduce yourself for the people who might not know you yet?
Okay, so I'm Christophe. I'm a French data engineer. I've been working in the data industry for the last 10 years. I've always seen myself as a software engineer first, but it happens that as a software engineer, I do stuff with data and I develop data software, data platform, data everything, data X, I would say. And yeah, that's what I do like professionally. And I also do content creation on the side. And I'm a freelancer for the last 4 years. And yeah, I live between Paris and Berlin. And yeah, that's who am I.
Awesome. All right, let's deep dive into who you are in your journey. Okay, first question is, um, what are you doing today? Like, what's your state of the art? The state of the art of Christophe Blefari. What are you actually working on, and what is your mission? Let's say, if you have a kind of a mission that is guiding you on what you're doing daily.
Yeah, okay. So regarding the state of the art, actually, this is fun because the data like ecosystem is we say it's evolving quickly and stuff like this. But to be honest, I don't feel I changed a lot since I started. uh, so I graduated in 2014, and at that time I started to learn Python, maybe 2010, something like this. And since I started working with Python, I never quit Python. And like now it's almost 15 years I'm working with Python and developing software with Python. So for everything I do, like I do Python, like this is my state of the art. And then after, on top of this, you add new libraries, new framework, new patterns, new way to do stuff. But actually, every code I write is like I tried to write it in Python. It happens like in the past, I wrote some Java code, Scala code, and stuff like this. But mainly it's Python. And then at the moment, like I do stuff in the cloud, but sometimes I do in premise. But what I do in the cloud, it's mainly GCP because I'm more comfortable with. But yeah, actually, I don't care like the cloud. Mainly, what I care about is like having a warehouse, having a database in which I can put stuff, put the transformation, put the data there, and do stuff with it. So yeah, my state of the art is like this, like having Python to orchestrate your code and write code, and then having a warehouse at the middle, doing stuff in the middle, creating data platform with warehouse at the middle to serve data use cases for people. And yeah, it depends on the data use cases. And so
Mhm.
when it comes to data use cases, it's like the missions. And right now as a freelancer, what I do is like a very broad spectrum of like missions, but mainly it's like building data platform for others, helping people building data platform. So either like by migrating from one tool to another, either by going from scratch and developing everything, or either by just adding like one piece of the data platform because people already have something. Depends.
Hmm. Awesome. And uh, what do you enjoy the most in the recent years and in your on your freelance journey in terms of the projects and the missions you've been working on? What's
Yeah.
your go-to?
So this is fun because I've started, I would say, like my professional life like 10 years ago. And for the last 10 years, what I did mainly and what like brought me money and food was doing data engineering stuff because I'm a data engineer first. What I like to do like most of the time is like moving data from A to B, I would say, sometimes with transformation, sometimes without. If I caricature, if I do like a caricature, it's like what data engineer does. But this is cool. But what I enjoy the most is when I do front end actually, because I started like software engineering many years before. And I started with like web development, like with Dreamweaver. Then after without Dreamweaver, like on HTML, CSS, and stuff like this, like with CSS art and stuff like this. And each time I go back to this, is like, yes, I feel nostalgic and I like it so much that every year I try to have like one personal project where I do front end and stuff like this. So yeah, that's what I enjoy the most, like doing front end development. But I would say that if I do it like every day, I think I will not enjoy it like friendly. So yeah, it's a balance to
Mhm.
find.
Yeah, I'm making a quick transition because I really enjoy your website. I feel like it's super. I don't know, the design. It's super smooth, the buttons and so on. So how did you build your website, or did you build it yourself? I can imagine so. But what did you use to build it?
You mean like Blef.Ether
Yeah,
or?
yeah. Sorry, this
Oh,
one.
actually, it's like a sim that I bought like on my blog, the blog I use. So I use Ghost as a blog, which is like an open source technology
Hmm.
to create websites. And I bought like a sim like 3 years ago, something like this. I bought it like for $15, something like this, and not 15, maybe 50. And I changed some stuff, to be honest, like just to adapt it like to code and stuff like this, because it was more a lifestyle theme at the beginning. But yeah, but to be honest, I should change it because yeah, it's too raw. It's just like I put it there. I'm happy with how it is, but I think for some people it might be hard to find some stuff in the website because it's just like a blog, and
Hmm.
people are not used to blog today. Like they're used to like social networks and stuff like this with search bar that works and stuff like this.
All right, so you're going to work on that. Awesome. That was just a quick transition. Okay, so coming back to your journey, we know what you're doing right now. We'll come back to the freelance part. How did you go about freelancing? How did you start, and so on. But for everyone who's listening, I think it would be super interesting if you could take us on a retrospective on your career since when you finished studies to like the key moments that where you like took decisions and went on a specific track to today. So can you share that with us?
Yes, absolutely. So I graduated, and so in France, like the studies are like structured like maybe a different way than in US and stuff like this. But
Hmm.
so I did a prep school, which is like when you are in France, something big when you do like scientific studies. I did my 2 years there, and then I went for 3 years in a computer science school, a public one, an engineering school. And then I graduated from there. But there is something just to understand that what brought me like to my, I would say, computer loving love story is when I was a kid at 6, my father gifted me a computer. So it was in 1998. And so at that time, it gifted me like a computer. So I had a computer in my bedroom on which I could do everything I wanted. At that time, it was just like installing Windows 98, but and opening Paint to do like shitty drawings. But that's my where my journey with computer started. And then I did like computer as a passion, like to work, to play video games and stuff like this. And when I graduated like my prep school, I had the chance like to go in a computer science school. So yeah, I went there just by default because like it was like okay, why not? And then I graduated the engineering school, and I started like an internship for 6 months in the company. And the goal of the internship was, and this is something that I brought many years after. Each time I hired like an intern, it's when you have an intern, giving a goal or a side project for the intern with a goal and a specific goal. I think it's like super good to keep the intern motivated, to give you like vision and stuff like this. So so I had a project, and the project was to build a custom solution to develop dashboarding within Django. So
Okay.
it was like with a back office, you could like parameterize dashboards and say, I want a row with 3 dashboards. In this dashboard, I want this KPI, this KPI, this KPI. It's a big number. It's a line chart. It's a bar chart and stuff like this. So it was like my internship project for the company. And so, I did it with Django. I did a lot of D3GS. I developed like cool visualization with D3 that I was proud about. Like one with, it was a heat map with Uber that was super cool, like to see marketing performance for like Nissan, because Nissan was one of the clients of the company. And I did like a D3, a presentation at a D3 meetup, and it was super cool. So that was my internship, and then the company hired me, and I stayed for 3 years there. It was mainly data missions. It was a consultancy firm, and it was like data missions for marketing department of different companies. And that's where I started to work with Hadoop. I think I did my first Hadoop installation in end of 2014, when Hadoop was starting to pick up in France/Europe. It was like a bit hard at the beginning because you arrive at the client and you have to install Hadoop and you don't know, you actually you know nothing about Hadoop, and you are trying to install it. The docs were awful. But it was fun. So I did a lot of stuff with Hadoop, like that Hadoop project, a bit of data science project, and then I left the company for another company called Auchan Direct, which was, I would say, a startup within Auchan. And Auchan is like a big retailer in France, one of the biggest. And Auchan Direct was the at-home delivery of Auchan in the main French city, like in Paris, Marseille, Lyon. You could have food delivered by your doorstep. It was in 2018, something like this. So before all the new boom of the delivery food app and stuff like this. There, I was managing the data engineering part. And I had a Hadoop cluster on premise in a room just 100 meters away. It was a cool experience to manage Hadoop cluster, physical Hadoop cluster, and to do server stuff. But I will not do it again, I would say. And then we got all fired. And then I went to another company. Each time I said with distance because I got used to it. But we got fired because Auchan wanted to simplify the workforce, I would say, and they wanted to remove the Paris offices. And so we decided not to follow in the north of France, so we all left.
Okay, makes sense.
And then I started in a startup called Captain. No, it was Chauffeur Privé first, and then Captain, which is which was actually a PHV company, so a Uber competitor in France, Uber, Bolt, or stuff or companies like this. So you can through an app order a PHV, and PHV business. And so I stayed there for 2 years. I managed the data engineering team. At the peak, we were 6 in the data engineering team. And in the data team, we were almost 30, I would say, something like this. And I would say it was my most complete experience in the company in terms of management, going until the end of the things, building stuff for a reason and stuff like this. But history repeats. The company got acquired and we all got fired
Oh my god.
again. And this time, like it was like almost 120 or 50 people that got fired from Paris because like the company was acquired by Freelance, which is like a German company. And when COVID like was at the peak, they decided to cut costs. Yeah, because PHV has been like hugely impacted by this. Et donc, yeah, so I was data engineering manager at this time. I stayed for 2 years, almost maybe three. I don't remember. And then I went freelance. Like at the peak of COVID, I decided to leave the company and go freelance. Some people were like, "What are you doing? It's COVID. You know, never gonna find like a mission and stuff." But yeah, I was naive and I wanted to leave the company, so it was no way I would stay in the company. So yeah, that's when it started. So it was like 2020, something like this. So now it's almost 4 years. And yeah, I can go deeper in my freelance journey after, but yeah, that was like the long way to tell my story, like professional story.
That's awesome. That's super interesting. There are many parts to unpack here. I like that you talk about the firing process like this because in the end, this happens all the time. Except like, and when we're in very competitive companies, like when we're competing with, like I'm thinking Airbnb, Ubers, and like these kind of industries where it is very interesting from a technological point of view, but this is also a, a thing in tech, which is there only be one in the end. Like the best one will keep everything, kind of, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting, and we'll be able to come back on this.
Yeah, but
Really,
there's just something to say that I have like we are privileged because we are like in the tech industry. I'm white. I have like a French name, and so being fired like is not. And I was young. I'm still young, but at that time I was super young, and I was like, yeah, okay, I will find a job like in a wink, if I would say.
mm,
So yeah, that also yeah explain why I have like this distance with this.
mhm.
But for some people, it's totally different. Like I'm very privileged on this topic at all.
Yeah, makes sense. It's good to mention it. All right, I'm going to target a direct data engineer question. Then we'll
Yeah.
come back to the freelance. But do you have one project in mind that you're really proud of? You're like, wow, that was impressive, and I'm grateful for this experience. And this is something that, well, speaking of finding a job or finding contractors on your freelance journey, that when you mention it, it's a wow effect. Like, do you have an experience to share with us that comes in mind? And maybe if you could take us through the steps of thinking process and implementation, maybe it is leading teams, it can be anything. Do you have something
Yeah.
like that?
So I would say I have two things. The second one we can talk about it later because it's more recent and it's like one of the mission I did as a freelance. But the first one I would say is like my captain experience, like in a wall, I would say, which was very successful to me. I would say like I really enjoyed it, and when I arrived at captain, if I just explain like the context at the moment I arrived, the data team was already quite big. I think maybe 10 people, something like this, around 10 people. But there were no proper data engineer or data engineering practice, I would say, more. Because there was like a data engineer, but he was not data engineer by by education, I would say, but more like a software engineer that was able to do data stuff. And when I arrived, all the data transformation were in SQL, in Postgres, and the Postgres was exploding. Like the joke at the time was, so it was in 2018, something like this. The joke from the data analyst was, okay, I will run the SQL query and I will take a coffee, or maybe I will go to lunch, or maybe I will go for groceries because like my query will last for 2 hours or something like this. And so that was the context. So it was like a warehouse in Postgres that was not scaling well, and my goal was to fix this. Um, and so I arrived and we decided to go with BigQuery and we redevelop like all the ELT and everything. And to do this, what I did is like, at that time, the modern data stack was not a thing and it was a bit different. Like the field was a bit different. So what I did is like, I just wrote to other data engineers in Paris, like in startup in the same scale of startups, like maybe 3 or 5 people, and just had a chat with them just to get inspiration. And it helped me a lot, like just to have a direction, to see shortcuts as well,
Hmm. Hmm.
and mistakes I did and to avoid them. And then we worked with the other data engineer that was already here and one we hired, which who was like my previous intern. With 3 people, we worked on this for 2 3 months, and we actually rebuilt one big pipeline in the new stack with BigQuery, with Airflow, and stuff like this. So we did it very fast, and with a lot of gains for the analyst. So that was like the beginning, and this was already a huge success. And then everything that went after, like the way we build the team, the way we build the platform, my vision as a data engineer was always in when you are a data engineer, you have to build tools and platform for others. It's not your responsibility like to write the transformation. It's not your responsibility to write even the extract load. It's not your responsibility like to be the broker and to extract the data from the production database. If you can give the tools like to other people to do it by themselves, it's better. So that's why we try to implement, and we did it like in a good way for all the analytics use cases. We had issues on the data science use cases, and I would say that we did not succeed at actually. But on the analytics part, on the reporting part, for the data analyst, it was a huge success. And the marker that can, yeah, test, yeah, there is a testimonial about this is like, because we got all fired, every people in the data team went to other data companies, not data companies, but in other startups or companies or in data teams. And yeah, I keep in touch with them, and I've worked again with a few of them. So I think that means that they like the stuff I built and the way I was thinking.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing. That's an amazing experience to just like you go and you see it, right? So this is why, and so it was on prem.
No, no, it was on GCP. It was like
So I mean, before you
oh, good
migrate
question.
everything on DCP.
I think it was not on prem. It was like just a
Yeah.
EC2 somewhere with like a Postgres on top.
Okay, okay, okay. Awesome. There are two things I want to go back to. I want to make a comparison between like how it felt to work and installing Hadoop clusters on prem, like seeing things. I feel like that's the best way to understand concepts, just like as basic as memory, but like when you see the physical thing, when you go to the cloud, then you know what's going on, and you know that it's not just a magic box. Like you know that in some part of the world there are copies
Yeah.
of what you have, and if the machine like is not performing well, you know how physically it is happening in the machine. So so maybe starting with this, how was it to, well, I just want to add one more comment. I feel that's super interesting and we take it for granted today, how you find the solutions to the architecture that you built, because back in the day this is like you didn't have I mean, not talking that like it's not like 40 years ago neither, but there wasn't as many resources and the cloud providers weren't as documented, and it wasn't as clear as of the best practices and the solutions, and the fact that you reached out to your peers in similar companies just to grab those best practices, this is something that we have today just doing a search on the internet. So can you comment maybe on like the on-prem versus cloud providers? How did you feel during the transition, and also how acquiring knowledge and sharing your work with others have helped you?
Okay, so from the on-prem to cloud, so there's one thing. So I think I've changed in the last year or 2 years, but before this, I was still advising to people that were going into the data engineering journey to do some Hadoop to understand what it means to be a data engineer and stuff like this.
Yeah.
The reason was because a lot of the stuff we were doing as data engineer was in the distributed world, I would say. And
Mm.
if you want to understand like better, like the distributed concept, like Hadoop is like a good platform for this because natively, like everything you do in Hadoop, like has to be distributed, has to be so distributed and stuff like this. But
Mm.
I think recently I stopped even mentioning Hadoop in every recommendation I do because
All right.
it doesn't make sense anymore.
Okay.
Because at some points we still had like leftovers of HDFS and it was like necessary to understand the HDFS. But now like S3 has become the king. And when I say S3, it can be like Google's cloud storage and stuff like this. But I
Yeah.
would say like the S3 protocol and having like files as blob like in cloud storages has become like the de facto. So you don't even care about HDFS now. So
Yeah. Quick question.
that's the first
Well,
thing about yeah.
sorry, quick question. When we say HDFS, are we talking about like HDFS and then YAR and then Hive and Spark or something like similar to these pieces? Or
Yes,
oh, okay. Or do you
because
like when you
to
say
me
to someone? Yes, please.
because when you say you have to understand Hadoop concept, it's
Yep.
not you have to understand Hadoop. It's like you have to understand MapReduce, you have to understand HDFS,
Yeah.
and you have to understand, I would say, how Hive is behaving because that's one of the. It depends what you're doing, but
Yeah.
or the resource allocation and stuff like this.
Hmm.
But mainly the stuff from Hadoop that lasted the most were HDFS and I would say Hive or like the resource allocation if some people were still using Yarn with Spark or stuff like this.
Mm.
But Hadoop, when it's like Pig or like all the awful languages that came with it,
Yeah.
all disappeared like pretty fast. So that's the first thing. Um, when I started like installing Hadoop, I was, I guess at that time it was like Cloudera, Mapper, and Hortonworks. I guess the first installation I did it with Cloudera, and then mainly it was Hortonworks everywhere, like in France with the client I was working with. So I did a lot of Hortonworks, and at that time, actually, it saved me because like if I had to install Hadoop from readme on internet from like the jar, it would be awful. And having like Hortonworks that was managing all the version and just like in a web UI, the stuff was a relief,
Mm.
even if it was like buggy as hell.
Mm.
And like yeah, I remember I spent like nights and day trying like to fix packaging and stuff when you do like upgrades and stuff like this. It was awful, but yeah, luckily, yeah, it's not anymore. But when you go from on-prem to cloud, to
Yeah.
go back on your question,
Hmm.
I think it doesn't matter anymore that you do Hadoop. What matters, I guess, when you are a newcomer is that at some point in your life, if you want to go deeper in your computer science understanding, is that you build a computer by yourself. Uh, it can be a server, but having like just a computer, like an office computer, like with a mother card, putting like the CPU, the GPU, the memory, the hard drive, and stuff like this, like plugging all the stuff together, just to understand like what's inside a machine. I think like it's something like you should do if you want to go deeper in your computer science understanding. To me, if I take just my proper experience, I built my first computer when I was 6 or 7. So it's like just something printed in my head, and like I cannot forget like the world, and like I cannot see the world like differently. And it's like easy for me like to understand what's in a computer. But if you're a newcomer, I guess it should be something you should do if you want to understand what's a machine and what runs in the cloud, just to materialize what's the memory, what's the disk,
Okay.
and the CPU and stuff like this.
Right.
And you had like another question, which was about the knowledge. So in
Yes.
2018, what I did is like reach for peers to have ideas, and the second thing was at that time Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, and companies like this were already like uh, writing blog posts and communicating at conferences and stuff like this. So that's the other part where I got like all my inspiration and ideas, because in France, like there were at that time not really like a lot of content. Maybe Octo was one of the companies that was writing a lot of content. Octo got acquired by another company. I don't remember the name. It was a consulting firm, and they had
Hmm.
like really good content about Hadoop and all the data stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was more international, and like it was like more the Silicon Valley startups that were like creating like the best written content. But I went back from this because the issue is sometimes that stuff that applies to Uber does not apply to your company. Like, and this is like a joke I have like every time. Like when they have like an issue at the Uber scale, what they do is like redeveloping a new open source solution for this. Like, if you have like if you are a small company with 5 data people in France, actually don't go this way. This is not the solution. Like you might find something else different that is
Yeah.
better.
Super interesting. Like, yeah, yeah, because it really depends. Yeah, how it frames that. So when you're searching for solutions or architectures and so on, cost in mind, scale in mind. Uh, but I feel like, yeah. Okay, so maybe we'll switch to the content creation part. I feel it can be very interesting. I also want to ask you about data ops, DevOps, and all the ops there is, ML ops. Well, ML ops maybe not, but all right. Just to focus on the content, you yourself write a lot of content, so why did you started your journey of sharing your knowledge and sharing all the contents you're producing today? What put you on that path, and what do you get from it?
Okay. So once again, it goes back like very early in my life. I think when I was a kid, and the first thing I remember is like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher, like a math teacher, to be precise. And yeah, life happened, and actually, I'm not a math teacher. And actually, I was good at math, but not really like to go into like so deeply that I could have become like a good math teacher. So I went like in IT, but this teacher thing like stayed in my head for years. And when I started my first like job, my boss at the time asked me if I wanted to go for like to go teaching at university in Marseille. And I say yes, actually. So it was, I think I started in 2015, something like this.
Okay.
And since then, I never like stop, and I still teaching today. So I teach at Marseille University, I think, for 7 years, and I stopped like 2 years ago. And
Mm.
now I'm teaching at a school in Rennes called NSAI. It's like a statistical school, like one of the best in France. Um, And this teaching thing is something that I really enjoy in life, just like having this transmission, trying to educate, or just like going like the education way, and trying to put vulgarization, simplified terms and stuff like this. I really enjoyed this part. I feel like fulfilled with this, like helping people finding the solution by themselves with my help from the outside is something that I enjoy a lot. So that one was one of my first like driver in life when I started doing stuff, and that's why as well why I like coaching, managing teams and stuff like this, like helping people becoming better is something that I enjoy. And so when I started like the content creation, especially like in data engineering, because I was doing when I was younger, I was like on forums, I was like on internet, like I had like a blog where I was like writing stuff about my life that no one cared about. But I was doing it. But when I started like doing freelance, like maybe 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I have free time now. I can spend time like creating content, because I like creating like free content for other people, and I think I produce like good quality content, and I like it to be free on internet for people like to learn from it, because there is something that I got from the France, which is like the education in France. Like education is free, and I did all my education like freely. And I think it's super important to have like free education, like on internet, in the countries and stuff like this. And that's why I started this journey actually,
That's awesome.
like giving back.
Uh-huh. Lowering the barrier of access to knowledge. That's a very important mission. Love it. And do you feel sometime when you're teaching that you just become better at what you're doing? Like, let's say you're working on a project, and then you go teaching, and while you're teaching, the way you just explain, or the way the questions comes at you, it just puts more light onto what you know, and maybe it helps you solve a specific problem, or it make you think of concepts in a different way. Does that apply or not?
I would say yes. I would say in general yes, but there is still like something that when you teach, every year you repeat the same thing, because
Mm.
when like a uni takes you as a teacher, uh, they take you like to give a specific class, and they want you like to do it every year, because they don't want to change like teacher every year. They don't want like people like to have like to rewrite the courses every year and stuff like that.
Mm.
So when I started teaching, I was teaching like Python, Pandas, and scikit-learn at Marseille University. And to be honest, like the two first years, it was like, I put like my concept very loud and clear. I will, and it strengthened me like in Pandas and scikit-learn and stuff like this. But when you do it for 7 years, at the end, it's just like repeating yourself and not improving you a lot, even if like you ask like student question and stuff like this. To be honest, when you do it 7 years and twice every year, because you have two groups, at the end you have seen all the question actually.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would say it depends. For instance, I guess that teaching within a company, or teaching like, or giving like talks at conferences with peers, maybe might improve you more than like teaching at university, because there is something difficult at universities, that students, especially right now, I don't know how it was in the past, but students ask not a lot of questions. Like, people are either like on Facebook, or at the time it was Facebook, now it's maybe other like social networks, but they listen to you, but not for like 7 hours, because my courses are very dense. It's like 5 or 7 hours, like for 2 or 3 days in a row. So yeah, obviously they are tired and stuff like this. So I would say like the quality of question is better when people are already graduated and stuff like this, and they are sure that the stuff you are giving to them will be like useful.
Hmm. Right. Right. I feel like once you've mastered the course, you just need to record it and put it online for free, and you don't teach it ever again.
Yeah,
And
but
then you teach something else.
I agree, but the issue is that there is something still in physical when you teach like in person
Hmm.
that you cannot do online.
Right.
I've done a lot of like courses on boot camps and stuff online,
Mm-hmm.
and there is something different when you do it in person.
Okay.
For instance, when you teach like computer science at French uni,
Mm-hmm.
students are in front of a computer. So when
Yeah.
they have issue, you don't ask for people like to share their screen. You can
Mm-hmm.
go behind them. You can take the keyboard. You can take the mouse. You can show them. You can like everything goes faster actually.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a wow effect because this is like something new to them, and you're just like, oh, you just do this and that. I remember
Yeah.
when I was in my master of big data and advanced analytics, and I had this teacher who was sharing with us. I'm not sure. I think we were doing. I believe I'm not sure, but either it was Spark or it was PySpark, and we were doing. I'm not sure exactly what we were doing, to be fair, but I just remember like me feeling like you're facing this error that it's the first time and you're lost and you're like, oh my god, how can I get out of this? And he just arrives, turn a little bit the computer and just start typing super fast. I didn't knew like you were able to type that fast on the computer, and like all the terminal things were going so fast. And fun fact, I was the only one to have a French keyboard at the time, so he just arrived and starting typing very fast, and then it was like, whoa, what's this keyboard going about? um so I relate to that story. I relate to that, and I'm grateful for him and yourself to take the time to like go and do these obvious things maybe for you, but at that point it can really make the difference in terms of this person feelings around a specific area, either it's coding, Python, and so on. We all know that teachers are like the key things of how we feel. The first teachers of anything are going to have a big impact on how we're going to feel around a specific subject, and that's super important, I feel. And so yeah, just to
Yeah,
say that yep.
and this is funny because when I started teaching at uni, it was like the way where like data science was the sexiest job in the century, in the planet. Everyone was like, oh, I want to be data scientist. I don't know what it means, but I want to be data scientist and stuff like this. And my tagline when I each time I started the course was, so I'm a data engineer. I'm not a data scientist. So I will show you stuff like from the engineering viewpoint. And my goal is at the end of the course to convert someone that you should not be like data scientist, but data engineer. And
Mm.
every time, I had people like, oh, now I want to be a data engineer and not a data scientist. I was like super happy. Like even if only one person, like in a class out of 60 people, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like either way, if they say to go to the engineer or data science, like the concepts needs to be kind of aligned, kind of related, because in the end that engineers will work with data scientist teams, and understanding the use case of one role is very helpful to the other role to like follow best practices. And like you said, when you have in mind not only moving data from one point to another, but also like sharing this platform that users don't need you to do analytics or build their models, I feel that when you have this mission of the data engineer, then you care about the use cases. That could be interesting for maybe if you can share about the use case you were sharing before and the data science team. Like why wasn't it that much of a success, and what would you change today? I think we can go back on that. Maybe that sounds good. Do you want to comment something on this first?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I can speak about like this data science, data engineering relationship. Um, so I guess it comes a bit of uh, people that were like going the data science journey and having this frustration where for a long time a lot of data science projects weren't in production, and it was like super hard like to put data science projects in productions.
Hmm.
And so when I arrived like in the company, so I was like one of the first data engineer, proper data engineer.
Hmm.
But they in the data science team there were already I think five. So
Right.
when I arrived, it was like difficult for them because they were already here, and I arrived and I said, "No, we should do this stuff this way. Stuff should go first through the platform we built and stuff like this." So I tried to put like some rules, and I there is something also I decided, which was there should be no exception. Like when we get data, we get it this way. It goes through this pipeline. We don't create like an exception pipeline that flow the data in another pipeline. Like we have one way to ingest the data. It should go this way, and that's all. And there is no exception. The reason was because we don't want to have a mess of pipelines everywhere, like to do stuff. And I guess those constraints created like a friction with the data science team first. I should have been more flexible, maybe, and maybe they should have been like they should have like a better understanding and accept like the stuff we were doing. That was for the company's sake and not for just for us, like to yeah to to enjoy. That's one of the thing, and I guess that actually it snowballed after um, because what we did was a success. We put it like the production, the stuff we were building in production. It was working. Everyone was happy with it, and they were like in the company from longer than me, and they were still struggling to put stuff in production. Like the product team was not uh, asking them to put a data science algorithm like in the product and stuff like this, and it was like super hard for them like to go this way, and so it created like a rivalry between our teams rather than like something where we were working together.
Hmm.
And like and actually it was as well like in the blog post or in the literature, like on internet in 2018, 19, 20,
Mm-hmm.
um, all the articles speaking about data engineering and data science were saying like data engineering versus data science and comparing stuff like this. Like it was a battle. Either you go one way, either you go the other way.
Hmm.
One has like is doing Python, the other one is doing R, or yeah, you don't know. But it was like more like a rivalry rather than like uh, building a team with different skill sets and people doing going the same way and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I think it's like the roots of the stuff that creating this failure, I would say, personally for me.
Hmm. And do you have like lessons? I mean, you shared a few of them, but like if you were to redo it again, back in the days, what was the limitations in terms of putting ML use cases in production? So today, I assume that it's not a problem at all. We have like with all the cloud providers, it's pretty easy to have an API running, and you just make petitions,
Mm.
and the model is behind, and it returns whatever you need.
Actually,
But what was the limitations?
yeah, I think that there are still two issues that are like relevant today. The first one is you can be the best data scientist you can be. If the product team does not want to use your algorithm or your prediction, you're going to be useless. And when you data science, it's first a matter of getting the use cases rather than getting your model ready. Like if the product team doesn't want to put an ML algorithm somewhere as a feature in your product, your data science team will never be like in the product. It's like something like on the product side. And when I said on the product side, it means that you have to have some front-end developers that will develop the stuff needed for your algorithm. The backend developers develop the APIs needed to get the data and to feed it like in the model and stuff like this. So there is like a whole product stuff around putting AI in production. Still relevant today. You can do like stuff on the side, but if you want to be used by you, if you are an app, if you are a website, a platform, I don't know, a marketplace, if you want to be used by the consumer of your product, you have to go through the product team at some point. And that's one of the first struggle. The second one is hire first data scientists. I would say like hire data scientists before data engineers, because one of the reasons it was a failure for us, I guess, is because data scientists were there before and they had their habits, and when someone arrived after, it changed everything. It changes everything. And I guess still relevant today, it's like you have to hire first data engineers that will first build the base of the hierarchy of needs of AI, I would say, like the extraction, the loading, creating all the analytics, creating all the reportings, for all the data scientists not to be frustrated because they will do mainly reporting and analytics rather than data science. And so, yeah, if you want to go for data science, you maybe need first to have like clean data, or at least like you have to know your data before hire data scientist.
What you really need to hire at the beginning is someone that kind of know software engineer, data engineer, ML engineer, data science, and strong foundations on data analyst, and that's the perfect match. Is it?
Actually, it can be multiple people. Actually, you can hire like one data engineer, one data scientist, but it should be like there should have like a balance. You should not be like
Yeah.
5 data scientists and one data engineer, because you're gonna have
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, and it really also depends of the scale of the problem that you want to tackle.
For sure.
But that's super interesting. Well, speaking about teams, you have strong experiences managing data engineer teams. Can you share a bit about your experience? So you share about teaching in universities, sharing on like your journey of sharing content for free, high quality content. So how about managing teams? Do you see related skills in between your teaching and your managing skills, and like what can you share of insights with us in terms of what you learn through time managing teams and achieving goals
Yeah.
to projects?
Okay. So this is fun because when I go back like to my first experience, I remember I had in my life, I always had issues with like authority. So I was like a bit of a bad kid. Professionally, I would say, not personally, like with my parents. I think I was like, okay, I was just sleeping and eating when I was a kid. But I would say in my professional life, I was a bad kid, and I didn't like that much like the management requirements or people telling me what to do or stuff like this. I always thought that I would be better with freedom. Like if someone is trusting me and telling me, I want you to do this for this time and you are free to do it the way you want and stuff like this, I prefer it rather than someone telling me you have to do it like for end of the week, you do it this way, you do it this way, and micromanaging me and stuff like this. I didn't like it.
Mm.
And so in my first experience, I was like, yeah, managers are useless. I don't think we need managers in teams. Why do we spend money on managers and stuff like this? But to be honest, then I become a manager, and I had good managers after, and I was like, yeah, actually, it's kind of useful. Um, and this is fun to have changed this mind and to have been first like a bad kid and then being a manager, because
Mm.
it helped me like realizing why uh, and why you should try to be like a good manager.
Mm-hmm.
So a few advices. I don't think this is the same like being a teacher at uni and a manager. I think it's like totally different skill sets because teaching requires you to there is communication in between, but
Mm-hmm.
teaching requires you to like understand the concept, and teaching is something I would say technical, rather where being a manager is more like something on the human side, like understanding people, trying to trying to help them set the goals and stuff like this, which is like a bit different that when you are a teacher, where you have a plan and you just stick to the plan and stuff like this. Still, what I tried as a manager is what worked for me when then I saw like good manager was, and when I understood what I needed was giving freedom to the people I was managing.
Mm.
Like I always been a fan of, we have stuff to do. If the stuff is done when we have to be when we need it to be done, actually it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We can continue like this. And there is as well something I realized, which is, and becoming freelance helped me realize it like deeper. But when in my first experience, I was working, I would say 8 to 7, something like this, if
Mm-hmm.
I like simplify it, which is like a lot, I would say, when you are not like within the rule, because in France you have to work 35 or 37 hours, something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I learn a lot working like 8 to 8 or 8 to 7, something like this. But it's like tired me a lot. And when I left this first experience, this first job, I was like, okay, now I should change something. On
Mm.
the second experience, I did not change anything, but I tried, but I was too into it. But on the third experience, I realized I was manager and I changed something.
Mm.
And every day I was leaving every day. I tried every day like to leave the company at 6, because I was believing it was healthier and stuff like this. Um, and so when you manage people and they see you like live at 6, when other team people like are living at 7, 8, and stuff like this, it gives you the people in your team like more freedom. They're becoming like, yeah, I think it's empowering like to see your manager like living before you and saying you like, yeah, live whenever you want and stuff like this. So yeah, that's one of the thing. um but yeah, after this is like trying to create like relationship with people, trying to understand where they want to go, and trying to be like as well a model or a leader, like in because I'm good technically, so I could also use my technical leadership to help people growing. um, so yeah, I don't know if these are good advices, but that's the stuff I'm thinking about right now.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah. I feel like a part of the role of of a manager is a kind of a load balancer, like this analogy of
Yeah,
just making sure you're pushed to grow, to learn, but you don't get all the like all the all the questions, mails, everything that can come from a client, other teams, and so on. So it is kind of your load balancer, and it makes sure not only that you receive um, like, of course you receive more work than you can do at some points and so on, but yeah, I feel like good managers can really reshape the way we see professional life, which is awesome. And also I think that bad managers can create, like we said with subjects in classes, we can associate an emotion that is incorrect. It is just based on how things are at the moment or with those people, but it is not necessarily like this everywhere. You said a lot of different interesting things. I'd like, maybe just before we go into the last few questions and then the question from the previous guest, and then you'll have to have a question about the next guest. I just wanted to come back briefly on the freelance journey. Do you have some insights in terms of like how do you go about funding missions, how hard it was, what did you learn, do you like it or not? Can you share a few things around that?
Yeah. So if we go back like to my professional path, I started like becoming freelance start of 2020 when the COVID was like at the peak,
Mm,
and so I got lucky, to be honest. Like since I've started like becoming freelance, I always had mission every time. Like I never was like without a mission.
mm,
The reason was maybe two or three things. The one of the things is like now I'm creating content, so I'm visible. So even if I'm not asking for missions, a few people still reached out to me, and I help people through this way. Like it generates leads.
mm,
That's one of the things. But there is something I realized, which is like the maybe the most powerful insight is you have to build a network, okay? But your network is not like going to LinkedIn, creating like post and having like subscribers. Your network and the network that will vouch for you is your previous colleague actually, and everyone has worked like except if you are like just graduated, and I will not advise you to go freelance if you just graduated, but if you have worked like 3 4 years, actually your network is like your previous coworkers, and actually your previous coworkers, when you look at it, a few might have changed companies and not in the company where you have met them, and then they know people, they can vouch for you, they can recommend you, maybe your previous manager or a previous manager from another team that change company or stuff like this. And actually your first network and your better network will be all your previous coworkers. And the reason, because it's the best network, it's because you have probably worked with them already, and they can vouch for you and say, yeah, when I worked with Christophe, he developed this, and it was like good because this. Rather than like growing numbers on LinkedIn, where like people know you, but only through like a LinkedIn page. So that's one of the first thing to like start looking for missions. After this, there is something very important, I guess, is like have a clear offer, I would say. Like try to understand what you can bring it to a company actually. Like on my side, I know that my core strengths or the place I'm the best is in the problem solving topic. Like if you have an issue about data and real data engineering, in any way, I will try to find a solution, and we will find a solution, and we build something. Like
mm.
I don't care, even if it's not Python, because like I'm comfortable with Python. But if the issue is like, yeah, if I like your mission, if I like your context, and the issue is like in I don't know which language, but I will try to find the solution, and I think I will we will succeed in this mission. So you have to identify your core strength and then build your freelance offer around it to be clear when you sell it to people.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's how you find, I would say, like your first mission and how you like bootstrap like the journey.
Hmm. Awesome.
But once again,
Awesome.
I got lucky because I got fired, so I got like the unemployment pay, which helped me as well, like to be stable and to have like a revenue, even if I had no revenue. But actually, I got revenue since day one,
Hmm.
and stuff like this. So and still we go back to, so I'm in tech, I'm white, I'm French, my name is
Yeah.
Christophe. So it helps me as well, like going into the mass.
Yeah. Yeah. But even though you decided to take these actions, and that is worth what it is, and it is
Yep.
inspiring, and I'm sure that that this path is to be considered by many people that really like the take on the take of Naval Ravikant on this kind of topics, where he said that in the future everything is going to be like a very small team working on like in a decentralized way, kind of. And the other point that I really like about that relates to this is like accountability. So I'm going to take accountability on solving problem with my teams right now in my companies and so on. And today the person who is my manager, in 5 years they might be director, or they might be on this other company doing fun things. And so then, not only for them knowing how you work, but also for you knowing where you're going, because if you know this person works like this, then you know where you're heading and if you want to work on this project or not, which is also very valuable.
Yep.
Awesome. So, three last questions. The first one is going to be the where can we find you? So you have two podcasts, one blog. We're going to discuss about that. The second is like, do you have a message that you want us to go home with from this episode or something else? And the third is, I'm going to ask you the question of the previous guest, and maybe you can give us a short answer. And afterward, you're going to share the question with us. So, first one, where can people find more about you? You have a blog and you have two podcasts. Can you share more about the different places?
Yeah. So I have like a website called blef.fr. So blef.fr, like French. On the blog, you can subscribe to my newsletter. So I have a weekly newsletter in which I curate every week data engineering, data science, AI, and analytics engineering article. So the idea of this weekly newsletter is to give people between 15 to 30 links where they can like find food for source and stuff like this, and every time is like fresh, it's like article from the previous week. And because I'm French, I'm trying like to decrypt this article, giving some sarcasm and stuff around, like my whole ideas about it. So it's on my blog. You can subscribe for free. I already have like 4,000 subscribers. And I communicate on the side on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You can find all the links on my blog on blef.fr. And I have two podcasts, one in French, one in English. But it's not yet regular as you. It's more like in English, I have one episode. The idea of the podcast in English is like human of data, is like just trying to learn more about people that are doing data, but not professionally, more personally, who they are, why they went the data way. And in French is more like having deep discussion with people, but more than one person. It's more like having like a round table with people and talking about data. So we have two episodes. The first one is about self-service, and the second one was around orchestra and orchestration. Yeah, I have a few other, but they are not published yet. That's yeah for my content.
Awesome. Amazing. All right. So, do you have a message that you want to people to go away with? before we pass to the question of the previous guest, do you have something that you want us to keep in mind, whether it is personal, professional, something that we discuss in this episode or not?
Yeah. Okay. There is something I can share, and I already share, I guess, in the episode, which is around my vision of data engineering. I think that, and this is maybe like the only takeaway from the episode. I think data engineering is software engineers or software engineering, but apply in the data field. So what it means is that you should get inspiration from your software engineering peers within your company. You should comply to their standards. You should try to work with them more and stuff like this. I think like data engineering is still very new. Having like role models in the software engineering is like important, and trying to get inspiration from the field there is like very important, I guess.
Awesome. Amazing. Perfect. Let's switch to the question of the previous guest. So it is a question about AI bias and legislation. So somehow it is indirectly related to data engineering, but let's see what's your stake at this question.
What are you doing to support the reduction of data of AI biases and the implementation of legislations?
So we're just starting with this concept. Do you have an answer to this question? So Leon asked us this question. Do you have something to share? Maybe like how do you make sure of AI biases and legislation from a data engineer perspective, or like ethics? How do you choose the projects you work on? Any answer that comes to mind?
Okay, so I have an easy answer for the AI bias part, which
Mm-hmm.
is I don't care because I don't write any AI program actually. But
Yeah.
actually, I care because I think like we should have unbiased AI and stuff like this. But in
Right.
my professional life, I don't write any AI program that take decision that can be biased or not. Like
Uh-huh.
my job is still like moving data from A to B, and if there is like a bias like in the A source, obviously will be on the B source, on the B destination. But yeah, regarding bias, I cannot say a lot. But still, regarding legislation, like mainly from the GDPR, it has been a huge topic like in the data industry for years, but with the AI Act, it changed a lot, and not it changed a lot, but people are more talking about AI Act now than the GDPR. But
Mm.
GDPR is still here, and I think it's a good directive. I think like we should do more because when I look at a lot of companies are not doing anything about GDPR, or they do
Mm.
stuff, but it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue is that it's something that comes from law, and we are engineers, and there is a gap between law and engineers, and it's super difficult like to interpret correctly the law yeah for our engineering work. But I think it's still important. When I try when I can, I implement what needs to be done, and I try to do it like cautiously.
Mm.
But yeah, it's very difficult. Even if I look just at my content creation stuff, like having GDPR process for everything can be super awful. So what I do is like I do nothing. I just use like the tools uh, as they are, and try not to do the wrong stuff.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I think that this is like we discussed different gaps in this into this episode, but this is also definitely one. Like, how do we align with regulations? How do we keep up to date with regulations? And this is very hard. This is complex because like there is no like it is not often that we see a data scientist also being a data engineer. We don't see some people who are very aware of the regulation being very good data engineers. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying it's not that common. So based on that, we need more collaborations, maybe a legal team and so on. But yeah, there are many if in this equation that are not easy as of today. So I hope you like this question. Now I'm going to ask you for the next guest your question. So do you have a question for our next guest?
Yes, I have a question. My question is, do you prefer Java or Python, and why is it Python?
Okay, okay. And if the person is a software engineer in C, for example, like, do you think we could? Okay, so that's. Do you have a second question in case of the guest answers being Python, and we want to know more about it? Like, do you have something that comes to mind?
Yeah, it can be like, what's your favorite library in Python, or what's like the. Sometimes I go on GitHub and I read code from like great libraries to get inspiration, or just not great, but just popular libraries. Like
Mm,
I read a lot of Airflow code and stuff like this to
mm.
get inspiration. So yeah, what would be like the your favorite library in Python?
Awesome. Awesome. Amazing. So, Christophe, thanks again for coming on the show, for taking the time to share with us today. I had an amazing time. For everyone who is listening, thanks again for being until here in this episode. That means that you're really dedicated, super happy. If you feel like, feel free to subscribe to the channel as we're onboarding more and more experts to share their journey and learn from them. Christophe, I hope that you had a great time, and I wish you to have an amazing day. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for the invitation, and have a good day.